Hi everyone and welcome to Friday Sews. My name's Hayley and thank you to Jen from Today in Jen's Sewing Room for allowing us all to share this hashtag. So, what have I been sewing this week? Ta-da! It's a tunic and I made it using the 2014 Spring-Summer Ottobre magazine. And here's what it looks like modelled. However, you might notice that this dress is made in a really drapey, flowy viscose, which is the suggested fabric for this pattern. But who wants to make their life easy and choose the fabric that the pattern maker suggests? No, not I. So I made it from a corduroy. I ordered this from Rainbow Fabrics, intending actually to make a skirt. For me to make a skirt only really takes, it was a mini skirt, 0.6 of a metre. So I ordered the minimum cut, which is 1 metre. Foreshadowing, this will be important later. It arrived, and what do you know? It was just not what I thought. I'm sure you've had that experience if you bought fabric online. You think it's going to be one thing, it comes, it's a different thing. I actually really liked it, it just wasn't suitable for the skirt that I had intended to make. Off it went into the stash for, let's be honest, a couple of years. And one day, it just hit me. On a Ottobre tunic. I made this pattern many years ago and I loved the garment. I wore it so often. It was great to wear with leggings, tights, boots, easy, comfy, but the fabric, yeah. I was early on in my sewing career and I'm sure many of you have been there, or are still there, where you don't want to spend a lot of money on fabric because you never know how it's going to turn out. So that particular fabric was, shall we say, cheap in both senses of the word, and it wasn't the nicest to wear because it did have a static cling. So I didn't love wearing it for that reason, but I loved the garment. So I decided to make it again in this, and I am so pleased I came up with that idea because even though this isn't the recommended fabric, it's worked so well. It's a lovely lightweight corduroy. It does have some drape, and I'm just thrilled with the finished garment. So let me tell you a little bit about making it and all the many things that went wrong. Most of them were due to a lack of fabric, let's be honest. So it's number 18. You'll have to bear with me. I'm not the best at left and right, like anyway, but doing this mirror image in a camera is hard. So it's this one. No, it's not. It's this one. And it's intended to have long sleeves, quite deep cuffs, and you will see, nope, you will see if I go that way, a proper placket and everything. Having only had 1 metre, I couldn't do it with full length sleeves. I cut the longest sleeve I could with the fabric I had available to me. And there's more of a story to that, because if I show you the dress close up, I wonder if you all will notice anything strange about this corduroy. The wails are running horizontally, not vertically. And that is basically entirely due to my lack of fabric. I laid out the pattern pieces on the folded fabric, couldn't fit them, tried them a different way, couldn't fit them, tried it single layer, got confused with flipping the left and right, and no, too much. Folded it the other way on the cross grain and I could fit everything in nearly. Couldn't get the full length sleeves, but 3/4 works fine for this time of year. So yeah, I went sideways because of a lack of fabric and it's worked out fine. I don't think anyone would ever notice. I did wonder whether the flowers would end up looking wonky. Like, see how they're like that? Should they really be like that? What do you think? Let me know if you're staring at this going, oh my God, the flowers are going the wrong way. I really stared at it for a long time and I decided, meh, you couldn't really tell. So, you know what, maybe I don't want to know if you can. So with Ottobre, no seam allowances are included on the pattern pieces, which is fine, I can manage with that. I'm actually pretty good at cutting around the pattern pieces, adding on a seam allowance, and then at the machine just running it through the same seam allowance. I am a bit pedantic, so you know, I've marked things out, sewed them, measured them, checked them, sorry about the message there, and yeah, I'm pretty accurate, so not bothered about that. However, you do have to put some thought into where you do need seam allowances versus where you don't need seam allowances, and I went wrong with this front placket. So in my head, seam allowance is for sewing one piece of fabric to another piece of fabric, and you need the seam allowance like where the fabric meets. So when I was cutting the front piece with a fold over placket, in my head I was like, I'm not sewing it to another piece of fabric, so I don't need a seam allowance. I came across it with the very first step in the instructions, which was to fold over the seam allowance along the placket, fold it again, top stitch, and there you have an enclosed placket. Of course, I didn't have a seam allowance because I didn't cut one on the front edge, thinking I didn't need one. I don't know why I thought I didn't need one. Obviously I needed one. Anyway, I thought, oh well, it's a placket, it's turned to the inside, it's top stitch, no one will ever see it. So I just ran it through the overlocker, didn't think any more of it until I tried the dress on at the end. And I'm sure you can all see where this is going. The placket isn't entirely on the inside, is it? Oh no, you can see it. Yeah. So my error is not just in overlocking it, which is visible, it's in the colour of the threads as well. I'm one of those annoying people who like the overlocking threads to match the garment. I know, how I wish I didn't care about such pointless things, but I do. So when I sewed this, mainly on the overlocker, I threaded both needles with green, and then inside, with it being a printed fabric, I used white in the loopers so that it's not very visible on the inside. But of course, down here, it's very obvious. Anyway, if I had thought things through and realised that was going to be visible at the top of the collar, I could have just turned under 6mm or something, and having made this before, I would have known that it wouldn't have affected the fit that much. It's really roomy, there's plenty of space. I could have shortened the collar to match. One workaround I have thought of, which I might try, is colouring these threads in with a felt tip pen. I have little kids, I have lots of felt tips. That said, I have little kids, so our felt tips are all washable, but they do have a few fabric markers from kits where you like design your own t-shirt that obviously don't wash out. So if I can find a green one, I think I will give that a go, because I've got to be honest, it does annoy me. Having said that, I've worn this now 3 or 4 times already, and of course no one has ever commented on it, because why would they? They've probably not even noticed. Even if they did, if you're not a sewer, you wouldn't even know that was overlocker stitching, so it's not like anyone's going to say, your overlocker stitching's really visible. So probably worried about nothing. Anyway, the other issue I had, and this was again to do with fabric shortage, I cut all the pieces out, leaving a piece big enough to cut out the cuffs and collars, knowing that I would do those with my rotary cutter because they're small, they're fiddly, just easier to do. When it came to the point in time that I needed the collar, it was one of those busy days, and you know, I'm obsessed with sewing, but I've got other things going on in my life. I've got a job, I've got a family, so quite often I'm just snatching little bits of time here and there, and I had 10 minutes and I thought, oh, I'm just gonna cut out the collar and the cuffs, etc. So I cut out a collar, fused it, my interfacing, left it to cool down, went back to the cutting board to cut out the collar stand. And instead of cutting out 2 collar stands and 1 more collar, I cut out 3 collar stands. So there I was with 1 collar, 3 collar stands, and like no fabric left. When I say I was short on fabric, I'm not exaggerating, and I mean I do exaggerate a lot, so but trust me, I'm not now. There was literal like dust left behind. It was just like this is the biggest scrap I could find. Not even joking. When I realised what I had done, it was gross. I was very, very gross. And I screwed it all up, threw it in a bowl, and went and did something else. And then, as often happens to me, I was lying in bed, getting cross with myself for being such a fool, when it struck me, why not just use a different fabric for the other collar? So obvious, and yet it took me a while to think of it. I rummaged in the scrap bin and found a viscose twill. It's not exactly the same. It doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, most of the time the collar's down like that. You would be standing pretty close to me to get a glance at that, really, wouldn't you? Actually, it really worked in my favour because it's much thinner than the corduroy, so yeah, less bulk, easier to turn the collar. Actually a happy little accident. When I tried the finished garment on, I was super happy with the length as it was without a hem. So to preserve as much length as possible, the scrap bin once again did me a solid, and I used more of the same fabric to make a bias binding, a bias facing, I guess, really. For the sleeves, I cut them as long as I possibly could with the fabric I had available, and they come probably 3/4 length. When I tried the dress on, I knew that I could just add a cuff, and because it has to sit at a wider part of my arm, I knew it would slide on over my hand without messing with a placket or anything. So I literally cut 2 long strips of fabric, sewed them right sides together to form a loop, folded them wrong sides together, pressed them to make a band, and then I literally just overlocked them on in the round, right sides together, turned, done. This fabric frays something rotten. I think probably because I cut it on the cross grain. If you can see here where you've got a wale of corduroy. I'm sorry, this is really confusing me. Which way am I trying to go? There we are. Okay, so let me get my face out of it so that it focuses on the fabric, not on me. You can see how easily that whole wale just lifted off, and once one has gone, the next one's happy to go, and then you're just left with fronds. And I mean, look at it's, yeah. So the first time this dress went through the wash, one of the sleeve cuffs did fray, and it was just because I gathered the whole width of the sleeve into the cuff, and obviously where it was kind of bunched, one layer had slipped a little bit. I didn't take the full seam allowance effectively, and then going through the wash it just frayed and I was just left with that. So yeah, I have mended it. I'm super pleased with it. I really love it. I've worn it 3 or 4 times already and I only finished it about a week ago. So what a great make, and I'm so pleased to have found a use for this fabric. So what am I making next? I am really in need of a new dressing gown for spring and summer. I've got a lovely snuggly wintry one, but already it's getting a little bit too warm in the mornings and it's only March. So I'm going to make the Gather Patterns Buchanan dressing gown. I've made this before a couple of times for my parents. I've made one for my dad and 2 for my mum because she loved it so much she absolutely wore it out. This pattern goes up to a UK size 18, and I did actually cut it at the 18 line, knowing that that was the biggest it goes. That was what I made for my dad. My mum tried his on, liked it, so I've always made her an 18. I tried her 18 on at Christmas and it is too big for me. I'm gonna have to size down a bit. I don't know if I can be bothered to trace the whole pattern. I'm definitely not going to cut into it. But what I may do is lay it out on the fabric and then kind of chalk mark the important points and join the dots with scissors. Oh, I know, living on the edge. So the Buchanan robe is in my future, and the fabric I've chosen is this lovely floral cotton with flowers on. Not really a ditzy print, it's kind of, I would say the scale is bigger than that, but it's not a large scale floral either. navy blue background, lots of nice colours. And then for the contrast, I've chosen this hot pink. It's not as bright as it's showing on camera. Woo, that is neon. It's more of a softer raspberry, but it's pretty bright. And that is obviously for the, oh, hard to do it backwards, collar, belt. And also I am going to do the tops of the pockets. I'm going to do the patch pockets and the top of the pocket, which is cut separately, but they tell you to do it from the main fabric. For my mum's, I cut that from the contrast and it looked really lovely with just a little extra stripe of colour there. So that is what I'm going to do with that. Don't know when I'll get it done, but hopefully I will be back with you soon with an update on that. If you have watched this far, thank you very much. This is obviously my first YouTube video. It's not the first take because this is much, much harder than it looks, and not just the left and right thing, all of it. So credit to all those people who regularly publish videos on YouTube. It's no small feat. And yeah, I hope to see you again soon. Bye. Should we just do it? So, oh, hang on. Yeah? I'm hungry. Uh-oh, didn't mean to do that. Bye. Sorry, that's my daughter coming to say hello. Oh, cringe. Whilst I am fastidious about ironing every single seam 4 times, that's 3.